The Christmas train left the obese woman at the wrong station. The whole town laughed until the rancher wrapped his coat around her. "Ma'am, please wake up. You need to get off, now." Grace's eyes flew open. The conductor loomed over her, impatient, already turning to the next passenger. She lurched to her feet, grabbing her carpetbag, her heart pounding. Through the frosted window, families, wrapped packages, lanterns glowing through falling snow. The train jerked. She stumbled down the aisle and onto the platform, cold air hitting her face like a slap. Then she looked up. Willow Creek. No! Her stomach plummeted. This wasn't Pine Ridge. This wasn't where she was supposed to be. She spun around. The train was already pulling away, whistle screaming, disappearing into white darkness. Gone. The last train until after Christmas. Grace stood frozen as snow gathered on her shoulders, reality crashing down in waves. She'd fallen asleep, gotten off at the wrong stop. And now she was stranded. Christmas Eve, 1885. The Harringtons were expecting her tonight, the wealthy family in Pine Ridge who'd hired her as holiday help. They'd paid her train fare in advance. Around her, the platform emptied fast. Families rushed toward wagons, voices bright with laughter. Somewhere, carolers sang, "Oh come all ye faithful, joyful and warm." Grace had never felt more alone. She ran to the ticket window, hands shaking. "Please, is there another train to Pine Ridge tonight?" The station master didn't look up. "Not till day after Christmas." "But I got off at the wrong station. I need to get there. It's urgent." He glanced at her then. His eyes swept over her body, her size, her worn coat, her obvious desperation. Something cold flickered across his face. "No trains. Can't help you. Is there a boarding house? Anywhere I could. Everything's full. It's Christmas Eve." He turned back to his ledger, dismissing her like she was nothing. Grace's throat closed. No money for a hotel even if there was one. No money for food. Nothing. She was stuck. Desperate, she approached a well-dressed woman near the platform edge. Two small children clung to her skirts. "Excuse me, ma'am, please. I got off at the wrong station and I just need..." The woman's gaze flicked over Grace's body and stopped. Lingered. Her expression shifted, disgust barely hidden behind politeness. She pulled her children closer, as if Grace might contaminate them. "I'm sorry. I can't help you." She walked away fast, heels clicking against the wooden boards. Grace stood there, vision blurring. The rejection hit harder than the cold. She sank onto a wooden bench near the station wall, snow falling heavier now. Thick flakes clung to her eyelashes, melted on her cheeks, or maybe those were tears. She couldn't tell anymore. The platform emptied. Carolers moved on. Lanterns dimmed one by one. And Grace sat alone in the growing dark, clutching her bag, with nowhere to go and no one who cared. "Please, God," she prayed silently, desperately. "Please. I don't know what to do." The words felt hollow, like they'd freeze before they reached heaven. "Miss." Grace's head snapped up. A man stood before her, tall, broad-shouldered, weathered face softened by kind eyes. He wore a rancher's coat, practical and worn, and carried a box of supplies. "Are you all right?" His voice was gentle. "Careful." Grace tried to answer, but her voice broke. She shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. He set down his box and crouched in front of her, not too close, just present. "Steady. What happened?" "I got off at the wrong station." The words came out shaky, broken. "I was supposed to be in Pine Ridge. I fell asleep and now..." Her voice cracked. "There's no train until after Christmas. I have nowhere to go." His expression shifted. Not pity. Something deeper. Understanding, maybe. "You got family? Someone who can come for you?" "No." Grace's hands twisted in her lap. "I was going to work for a family there. The Harringtons. They're expecting me tonight and if I don't show up..." She covered her face. "I don't know what to do." Silence. Just snow falling and Grace's ragged breathing. Then, quietly, I have a ranch a few miles out. It's not much, but it's warm. You can stay there tonight. Grace looked up, hardly daring to hope. I can't impose on. It's Christmas Eve, he said simply. Nobody should be alone tonight. Something in his voice, steady, honest, kind, broke through the fear. Thank you. Her voice was barely a whisper. Thank you. He stood and offered his hand. She took it. His grip was strong, steady, warm, the first warmth she'd felt in hours. Name's Ethan. Ethan Cole. Grace. Grace Sullivan. He picked up her bag and his supplies, nodding toward a wagon at the platform's edge. Come on. Let's get you out of this cold. As they crossed the platform, wind cut through Grace's thin coat. She shivered. Ethan noticed and quietly shrugged out of his heavy rancher's coat, settling it over her shoulders. Here. It was warm from his body. Grace clutched it close. You'll freeze. I'll manage, he said, firm and kind. You need it more. A few people glanced their way, a whisper, a stare, but Ethan didn't care. He guided Grace toward the wagon, steady hand at her elbow. As she followed him through the snow, something fragile stirred inside her. A whisper. Maybe you got off at the wrong station for a reason. Sometimes the wrong place is exactly where you were meant to be. Behind them, the station faded into white. Grace climbed into the wagon beside a man she didn't know, heading toward a place she'd never seen. But for the first time all night, she felt something other than fear. She felt seen. And on Christmas Eve, when you've been invisible for so long, being seen feels like its own small miracle. The ranch appeared through the falling snow like something out of a dream. A small house with a peaked roof, a barn hunched against the wind, fences barely visible in the white. Ethan helped Grace down from the wagon, his hand lingering just a moment to steady her. It's not fancy, he said, but it'll keep you warm. She followed him inside, stamping snow from her boots. The house was small but tidy. A single room with a kitchen area, a table and chairs, a stone fireplace, and a narrow cot near the hearth. Everything was clean, well kept, carefully maintained. But there was something missing. No Christmas tree. No pine garlands. No candles in the windows. No decorations of any kind. It felt like a house that had forgotten how to celebrate. Grace set down her bag and looked around, unsure what to say. That's when she saw her. A little girl sat on the floor near the window, so still. Grace had almost missed her. She wore a simple dress, her dark hair pulled back in loose braids. She was staring out at the falling snow, her small hands folded in her lap. 4 years old, maybe, and utterly silent. Grace's breath caught. Your daughter? She asked softly. Ethan's expression tightened. He moved to the fireplace and began building up the fire. Lucy. She doesn't talk much. Grace approached slowly, careful not to startle the child. Hello, Lucy. The little girl didn't turn, didn't blink, just kept staring at the snow as if the whole world beyond that window had disappeared. Grace's heart ached. She glanced at Ethan. He was focused on the fire, his jaw set, his movements a little too careful. A man trying to hold something broken together. I'll get supper started, he said without looking at her. Grace watched as he moved to the kitchen, pulling out a pot, a few potatoes, some dried beans. His movements were awkward, uncertain. A man who knew how to work with his hands but not how to make a home. Can I help? Grace asked. He paused, glancing at her. You're a guest. Please, she said. I'd like to. He stepped aside and Grace took his place at the stove. She worked quietly, finding what she needed, salt, a bit of pork fat, water from the pump. As she chopped the potatoes and set them to boil, she began to hum. Silent night, holy night. It was an old habit, something her mother used to do. Music filled the empty spaces where words couldn't reach. Behind her, she heard a soft sound. Small footsteps. Grace glanced over her shoulder. Lucy had appeared in the doorway, watching her with wide, serious eyes. Grace smiled but didn't speak. She just kept humming, kept stirring the pot, her voice low and warm. Slowly, so slowly Grace almost didn't notice, Lucy crept closer. She sat down on the floor near the stove, her knees pulled to her chest, and listened. Grace's throat tightened. She kept humming, kept cooking, and felt something fragile and precious settle into the room. When supper was ready, they sat at the small table. Ethan said a brief, quiet grace. Lucy picked at her food, eyes downcast, saying nothing. But she was there, present, and that felt like something. After supper, Grace found a stub of candle in the kitchen. She lit it carefully and carried it to the window, placing it on the sill so its small flame glowed against the darkness. "What's that for?" Ethan asked. "So travelers know someone's home," Grace said softly. "My mother used to do it every Christmas Eve. She said it was a light for anyone who felt lost." Lucy's head turned slightly. For the first time, she looked directly at Grace. Their eyes met, and something shifted, small, fragile, but real. That night, Grace lay on the cot by the fire, wrapped in a quilt that smelled of cedar and wood smoke. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, still reeling from the chaos of the day. But she was warm. She was safe. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Just as she was drifting off to sleep, she heard soft footsteps. Grace opened her eyes. Lucy stood beside the cot in her nightgown, clutching a worn rag doll with button eyes and yarn hair. "Hello, sweetheart," Grace whispered. Lucy didn't speak. But she sat down on the floor beside the cot, her doll cradled in her arms. And she stayed there. Grace reached down and gently touched the child's hair. Lucy leaned into the touch just a little. And Grace's heart, which had felt so heavy and lost just hours before, began, slowly, carefully, to hope. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, something broken was beginning to heal. Grace woke to pale winter light filtering through the frosted windows. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The wrong station, the cold bench, Ethan's kindness, the silent child. Lucy. Grace looked down. The little girl was still there, curled up on the floor beside the cot, her rag doll tucked under her chin. She was asleep, her breathing soft and even. Grace's throat tightened. How long had this child gone without someone to hold her? To sit with her? To see her? Carefully, Grace rose and covered Lucy with the edge of the quilt. The child stirred but didn't wake. The house was quiet. Through the window, Grace could see Ethan in the barn, tending to the animals. Christmas morning, and he was working as if it were any other day. Grace moved to the kitchen. There wasn't much: flour, a bit of sugar, some dried apples she found in a tin. But it was enough. By the time Ethan came back inside, stamping snow from his boots, the smell of baking filled the house. He stopped in the doorway, staring. "What's all this?" Grace looked up from the skillet, her face flushed from the heat. "Christmas breakfast. Or the best I could manage." She'd made apple fritters, golden and sweet, dusted with the last of the sugar. They sat on a chipped plate in the center of the table, still steaming. Ethan's expression did something complicated. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." Lucy appeared then, drawn by the smell. Her eyes went wide when she saw the fritters. "Come here, Lucy," Grace said gently. "Help me put these on a plate?" Lucy hesitated, then moved forward. Grace handed her a clean cloth. "Hold this so you don't burn your fingers." Together, they arranged the fritters. Lucy worked carefully, seriously, her small hands steady and deliberate. When they sat down to eat, Grace bowed her head. "Thank you, Lord, for this food, for this warmth, for bringing us together on this Christmas morning." Amen. When she looked up, Ethan was staring at her, his eyes suspiciously bright. After breakfast, Grace looked around the bare house and made a decision. "Lucy," she said, Want to go outside with me? Find some pine branches? Lucy looked at her father. Ethan nodded slowly. Bundle up. They went into the snowy yard, Grace and Lucy side by side. Grace showed her how to find the best branches, the ones with the most needles, the greenest color, the shape that would look prettiest on a mantle. Lucy's cheeks flushed pink from the cold. And when Grace said something silly about a crooked branch looking like it was dancing, Lucy's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close. Back inside, Grace arranged the branches on the mantle over the doorway. She tied them with strips of fabric from her bag, red and green, salvaged from old dresses. It's starting to look like Christmas, she said. Ethan stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching them. His face was unreadable, but his eyes told a different story. That afternoon, Grace found the Bible on a shelf, unopened. She brought it to the fireside and motioned for Lucy to join her. Want to hear a story? Lucy sat down, the rag doll in her lap. Grace read the Christmas story, but she didn't just read. She brought it to life. She used different voices for the shepherds and the angels. She made the stars shine bright in her words. And Lucy leaned closer. Her eyes stayed locked on Grace's face, drinking in every word. And then, when Grace described the angels singing, she sang a line herself. Lucy laughed. It was small, barely more than a breath. But it was real. Ethan, sitting at the table mending a bridle, went completely still. His hands stopped moving. His eyes filled with tears. Grace looked at him over Lucy's head, and understanding passed between them without words. She's coming back. Your daughter is coming back. The days that followed blurred together in a way that felt almost dreamlike. The snow kept falling, heavy and relentless. The roads became impassable. Grace couldn't have left even if she'd wanted to. But the truth was she didn't want to. She cooked. She cleaned. She mended Ethan's shirts and organized the kitchen and sang while she worked. Lucy followed her everywhere, a silent shadow that grew warmer, softer, more present with each passing day. One evening, while Grace sat by the fire sewing a torn seam, Lucy appeared beside her. Why don't you talk much, Lucy? Grace asked gently. Lucy's face went still. For a long moment, Grace thought she wouldn't answer. Then, so quietly Grace almost missed it, Mama went away. Grace's hands stilled on the fabric. I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Does it stop hurting? Lucy whispered. Grace set down her sewing and pulled Lucy into her lap. The child came willingly, curling against her like she'd been waiting for permission. My mama went away too when I was young, Grace said softly. And no, it doesn't stop hurting. But it gets softer. Like snow covering sharp edges. And God sends people to help us carry it. Lucy leaned her head against Grace's shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, the fire crackling, the world outside white and silent. Across the room, Ethan watched them, his throat working. A week passed. Then another. A neighbor came by one afternoon, bringing eggs. She saw Grace in the kitchen, Lucy close beside her, and her face tightened with judgment. After she left, Grace felt the weight of it. People will talk, Mr. Cole, she said quietly that evening. Ethan looked up from the table where he was carving wood. Let them. It's not right. Me being here. Unmarried. People will think. I don't care what they think. His voice was firm. You've brought light back to this house. To Lucy. I won't send you away because of gossip. Grace's eyes stung. I should reach Pine Ridge soon. The Harringtons. Stay. The word came out rough, almost desperate. Please. At least through New Year. She looked at him, and saw something in his face that made her heart skip. All right, she whispered. I'll stay. But even as she said it, she felt the shadow creeping in. The gossip was spreading. Reaching town. Reaching the Harringtons. And Grace knew, deep in her bones, that this fragile peace couldn't last forever. It happened 3 nights later. Grace woke to Ethan's footsteps, fast, panicked, wrong. She sat up, heart racing. What's wrong? It's Lucy. His voice cracked. She's burning up. I can't wake her. Grace was on her feet before the words finished. She ran to Lucy's room, Ethan behind her. The child lay flushed red, breathing shallow. When Grace touched her forehead, it was like touching a stove. How long has she been like this? She asked, already moving. I don't know. An hour? Maybe less? She was fine before bed. Get cool water. Cloths. And whiskey. Yes. Ethan ran. Grace pulled back Lucy's blankets and loosened her nightgown. The child's skin was slick with sweat, her small chest rising too fast. Lucy, sweetheart, can you hear me? Grace whispered. No response. Please, good. Not her. Ethan returned with water, cloths, and whiskey. His hand shook. What do I do? Should I ride for the doctor? In this snow? You'd never make it. We handle this here. She pressed cold cloths to Lucy's forehead, neck, wrists. The child whimpered but didn't wake. Talk to me, Grace said. Was she coughing? In pain? She was quiet at supper. Didn't eat. I thought. Ethan's voice broke. I should have noticed. You couldn't have known. This came on fast. Grace mixed a few drops of whiskey with water. Help me sit her up. Together they lifted Lucy's limp body. Grace coaxed tiny sips into her mouth. The child sputtered but swallowed. Good girl, Grace whispered. The night stretched on. Grace worked without stopping, cool cloths, water, watching every breath. Ethan paced, gray with fear. She's all I have left, he said, voice raw. If I lose her. You won't, Grace said firmly. God didn't bring me here to watch her slip away. Ethan looked at her, something desperate and grateful in his eyes. I don't know what I'd do without you, he whispered. Grace wrung out another cloth, her hands trembling. Then it's a good thing you don't have to find out. Just before dawn, Lucy's fever broke. Her breathing steadied. Her face lost that terrible flush. And when Grace touched her forehead, it was cooler, not normal, but better. The child's eyes fluttered open. Grace? She whispered. Grace's vision blurred with tears. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. Don't go. I won't. I promise. Lucy's eyes closed again, but this time it was real sleep. Healing sleep. Grace sat back, her whole body shaking with exhaustion and relief. Ethan dropped to his knees beside the bed, his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. You saved her, he said, his voice thick. Again. You saved her. Grace touched his shoulder. She's strong. She fought. He looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. I don't know how to thank you. You already did. You gave me a place when I had nowhere to go. They sat there together in the gray dawn light, watching Lucy sleep, and something shifted between them. Something deeper than gratitude. Something that felt dangerously like hope. But hope, Grace had learned, was a fragile thing. And that afternoon, it shattered. The knock on the door came just after noon. Ethan opened it to find the sheriff standing there, hat in hand. Behind him stood a well-dressed couple, the man in a fine coat, the woman in furs. And behind them, half the town. Grace's blood turned to ice. The Harringtons. Mrs. Harrington pushed past the sheriff, her face twisted with righteous fury. There she is. That's the woman who stole from us. The room went silent except for the crackling of the fire. Grace stood frozen, her hands still damp from washing Lucy's fever cloths. I got off at the wrong station, she managed. I tried to reach you but... Convenient excuse, Mr. Harrington cut in, his voice cold and sharp. You took our money. You never showed up. And now we find you here, living unmarried with a man? You're a con artist, Miss Sullivan. The crowd behind them murmured, whispered, judged. Mrs. Harrington's voice rang out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Look at her. Do you honestly think we would hire someone who looks like that? She deceived us with her letters, took our money and ran. The words hit like physical blows. Grace felt herself shrinking, her face burning with shame. Ethan stepped forward, his voice hard. That's enough. Mr. Harrington sneered. Stay out of this, Cole. This is between us and the thief. This woman is not a thief. Ethan's voice was steady, strong. She got lost on Christmas Eve. I offered her shelter. She's done nothing but help since she's been here, cooked, cleaned, cared for my daughter through a fever that nearly took her life last night. How noble, Mrs. Harrington said mockingly. Defending the poor fat girl who tricked you with sob stories. Grace's vision blurred. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. I'm going to need to take her in, Cole. Until we get this sorted. No. The word tore out of Grace. Please, I didn't. I'll leave, I'll go. Just please don't. She grabbed her bag and ran. Out the door, into the snow, away from the staring faces and the cruel words and the life she just started to believe in. Behind her, she heard Ethan call her name. But she didn't stop. She just ran. Dawn came cold and gray over Willow Creek. Grace sat alone on the same wooden bench where this all started, her carpetbag at her feet, hands folded in her lap. The station was empty. The first train wouldn't come for another hour. She'd left the ranch in the dark, walking the 3 miles through snow. She hadn't looked back. Lucy's small face kept appearing in her mind. Don't go. But she had to. Her presence had brought shame, gossip, accusations. Ethan and Lucy deserved better than a woman the town saw as a thief and a liar. The tears had frozen hours ago. Now she felt empty. I'm sorry, God. I thought maybe you'd led me here. But I was wrong. Grace. She looked up. Ethan stood at the edge of the platform, his coat dusted with snow. In his arms, wrapped in a blanket, was Lucy. Don't go, he said. Grace shook her head, tears spilling. I have to. Your name is ruined. The town believes I'm a thief. I don't care what the town believes. Ethan crossed the platform in 3 strides. I know who you are. That's all that matters. He set Lucy down. The little girl ran to Grace, throwing her arms around her waist. Would you leave me too? Lucy whispered. Like Mama did? Grace dropped to her knees, pulling her close. Sweetheart, your mama didn't want to leave you. She loved you. Do you love me? Lucy asked. Yes. Grace's voice broke. Yes, I love you. Then don't go. Grace looked up at Ethan, helpless. Excuse me. The station master stood nearby, his weathered face uneasy. I heard what happened yesterday. At Cole's place. Grace braced herself. Instead, he said, I remember Christmas Eve. When you got off that train. You were crying, checking your ticket over and over. Saying, this isn't right. I should have spoken up yesterday. He pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. Found this in the lost items box. Your ticket stub. Printed clearly, Pine Ridge. You really did get off at the wrong station, he said quietly. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. Ethan took the stub, jaw tight. We're going to town. Now. Ethan. No. This ends today. The town square bustled after Sunday service. People talking and laughing. The sheriff stood near the church steps. The Harringtons were there too. Ethan walked straight to them, Lucy's hand in his, Grace beside him. The crowd quieted. He held up the ticket stub. This proves Grace Sullivan told the truth. She got off at the wrong station. She's not a thief. She's an innocent woman you tried to destroy. The station master stepped up. I saw her that night. She was lost and scared. She didn't trick anyone. Mr. Harrington flushed. That doesn't prove. Yes, it does, Ethan said. You accused an innocent woman to cover your embarrassment. Yesterday you humiliated her in my home. He looked at the crowd. Look at my daughter. Lucy stood straight, her hand gripping Grace's tightly. Lucy hadn't laughed in over a year, Ethan said. Barely spoke. I thought I'd lost her to grief. Grace brought her back. Through kindness and patience. 2 nights ago, Lucy nearly died from fever. Grace sat up all night saving her. Lucy lifted her chin. Grace sings to me. Grace makes me laugh. Grace stayed when I was sick. A ripple went through the crowd. Many had never heard Lucy speak at all. Ethan's eyes blazed. God sent Grace to the wrong station so she'd end up where she was needed. In my home. With my daughter. With me. He looked at the Harringtons. You owe her an apology. Mrs. Harrington's mouth tightened. Mr. Harrington looked away. The sheriff cleared his throat. No charges against Miss Sullivan. She's cleared. The crowd murmured, some ashamed, some softening. Ethan turned to Grace. His hand trembled as he pulled a small carved star from his pocket. Pale wood, 5 perfect points. I made this for our tree, he said quietly. For you. Grace's breath caught. Grace Sullivan, Ethan said, voice carrying across the silent square. You got off at the wrong station. But you ended up in exactly the right place. You brought my daughter back. You brought light back to a house that had been dark too long. You brought hope to a man who'd forgotten how to pray. His eyes shone. Come home. Not as help. Not as a guest. As family. He dropped to one knee. Will you marry me? Lucy tugged Grace's hand. Say yes. Please say yes. Grace looked at them, this man and this child who had saved her as much as she'd saved them. Tears blurred her vision. Yes, she whispered. Then stronger, yes. The crowd erupted, clapping, smiling, wiping tears. Ethan stood and pulled Grace into his arms. Lucy squeezed between them, laughing. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, eyes wet. Welcome home, dear. One by one, people came forward, apologizing, congratulating, welcoming. The Harringtons slipped away quietly. 3 weeks later, Grace stood in the small church wearing a simple cream-colored dress. Ethan stood beside her, steady and warm. Lucy stood between them, holding their hands, a crown of dried flowers in her hair. Pastor Reynolds smiled. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan kissed Grace softly, and the small gathering cheered. As they walked down the aisle, Lucy looked up at Grace. I love you, Mama Grace. Grace knelt, pulling her close. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. Ethan wrapped his arms around both of them. Grace felt it, finally, completely. Outside, snow began to fall again. Church bells rang. And somewhere above, a star burned bright. Not the one from Bethlehem, but just as miraculous. Because sometimes God sends you to the wrong station so you'll end up in exactly the right place. And sometimes the greatest blessings come wrapped in mistakes, carried on Christmas trains, and delivered into the arms of strangers who become family. Grace had gotten off at the wrong station. But she'd found her way home.